Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast. We are live in Arthur, Illinois at the Real World Dealer Summit, our first ever one, Don. We got a huge crowd of all of our loyal dealers. So blessed to have these people here this weekend.
Absolutely. There's several states represented in this crowd, probably, 300 or so people?
Yep. We're actually doing our first ever live bingo where some of our loyal followers have written down phrases that we say too much on the podcast, and everybody's got a card in their hand ready to mark it down and yell Booner instead of bingo for a prize that we're giving away. And we should have clarified the introduction audio does not count. So if anybody already marked one, they better erase that one. That doesn't count. They have to trick us into saying the word with their live questions tonight. That's the ultimate goal here.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, this is really odd. We didn't practice this, and we probably didn't even go over the rules enough before we started. But we're going to wing it anyway. We're going to save as much time as we can for questions this week. That's what this show is about. Dr. Bronson Strickland just did a phenomenal job. Give him a round of applause. We're so blessed to have him as a friend, and we've been together for many events now. You still got a couple more, and you talk about a guy that takes deer hunting and science and blends those together for even idiots like me to understand. He's a pretty special guy.
Absolutely, yeah. We filmed some videos earlier today. I think 3 or 4 videos that's going to be coming out on a variety of topics. Bronson and I are both going to be in Delaware on Saturday, doing another event for our distributor out there. So. Numerous events we've done over the years with Bronson.
Yep, it's I send him a text every once in a while with my odd question, and the one thing about Dr. Strickland, he never says never and he never says always, so he just politely says, "You're crazy, quit thinking that way." So he's very politically correct about my government conspiracies and weird ideas, but
unlike me,
we kind of see eye to eye on that a little bit. So while we got a couple guys getting ready to come up and ask questions, get your questions ready and let's get going because we want to move through this tonight. You got some prizes to win, but tell us a little bit about what you got done this last week. It was just a couple days ago we were recording, but we've had a really, really busy schedule.
Yeah, I don't remember when we talked last, but there was one day last week towards the end of the week I did 3 properties, consulted on 3 properties in one day. That was a first. Did we talk about that on the last podcast?
Yeah, I think we talked about that one.
Well,
but I doubt
we talked about it again.
I was in Missouri on Saturday. Austin Razor and I went out there to Missouri to look at a farm of a really good friend of ours, Brent Ratcliffe, who has been a nutritionist with Real World years ago. Real good friend of ours, and he wanted us to get out there last year, and we couldn't make it happen. And Don, over the last 3 years, this farm is the closest thing I've ever seen to potentially one day being like your home farm. The layout of it, we talk about neighbors and we talk about access. This thing has everything going for it. He's going to have hard decisions in the future whether to hang on to this because he lives in Minnesota and the farm's in Missouri. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you what, it had everything that you could ever dream of for turning into an unbelievable deer hunting property, and I'm really looking forward to putting the plan and getting you to review it and approve it. It's a pretty special place.
Well, Brent was one of the guys that actually developed our Expect Healthy Deer technology back in the day. Still good friends, and anxious to see that plan.
Yeah, we played a little game while we were touring the property. Austin was in the back of the side-by-side not paying attention, and I made Austin guess what the plan was going to be. Mm-hmm. And he's been hanging around you enough that he actually was really close in thinking about what the plan was going to be for a Higgins plan. So I think he's been around us long enough. He's starting to see things out of the gate like we want it.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what it is.
People make it more complicated than what it is, but what it really comes down to just lack of intrusion and access. It's pretty much the whole theme of this podcast as we continue to talk. So, All right, well, we want to get to the first question up there. Let's go. Is Dwayne already standing up for a question, or is he We got Dwayne Hopkins in the room today. There's not many more guys. We actually might have to pass him a microphone to answer some of these questions because there's not many guys that are going to be able to answer seed questions like he does.
That's right.
Oh, somebody's walking up here.
Jeff Gibson.
Jeff Gibson has got his bingo card. He's already gonna.
I've been thinking about this question for several months. So trying to get Don fired up here. I even put it in my phone here and wrote it down. One question is, did you talk about skunks and them breeding last two podcasts ago?
Yep.
2.
Okay, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but aren't skunks like most animals? They breed the same time every year?
I thought so, but if you look at all the road-killed skunks during the last couple of weeks.
I would agree with what your thinking is, but I thought about that, and I thought it's got to be on daylight time and things like that, I would think, with skunks.
I don't know. You have to ask a skunk expert.
All right, here comes the question. All right, let me get my spot here.
My wife tells me I smell like a skunk sometimes.
Here, I would never be a conspiracy theorist 10 years ago, but since our world is what it is now, here you go. Conspiracy theory for you. Dr. Anthony Mengele Fauci, as I call him, and EHD. What would you say about the midge fly being bred to carry EHD and released on purpose by DNRs?
I'm a conspiracy theorist myself. That one might be just a little bit far-fetched.
Well, the first time I ever encountered EHD was in 2007 in Pike County. I got to hunt there with a buddy, and I never saw a mature doe. I saw 7 what I thought were does coming down the side of a ridge, and they were all fawns. And they were all motherless because they'd all died from EHD. So anyway, I thought that might get you a little fired up with Mr. Mengele. So
You're going to have to try harder than that.
Okay, doggone it. All right, well, that was my question. So
Have we checked one off yet? I don't think we have. We're doing good. We're holding out for all these people. Here we got another. Uh-oh. Does he have a fat head in his hand?
He's got some kind of a...
So this
Oh,
question,
my goodness.
Can you hear me? This question's for Don. So on the way here, we rolled through Arthur, and we ran into this gentleman. I was wondering if you recognized him, purple-haired freak.
Oh, yeah.
He was campaigning for the Bidens and Higgins of 2024.
I don't recognize that guy whatsoever. One of my most prized possessions, I can tell you that. I'm going to hang it up in the bedroom.
You've officially made it in the outdoor industry.
This is up for auction. Do I have a bid?
He'll sign it and make it worth less.
Let's make sure that this gets on the video.
Hey, I bet if you took this to the poll, they'd let you vote twice.
Well, if there's anything I'm not, it's a purple-haired freak.
Everybody's marking it out. Oh, my goodness. That's hilarious. We've come to a new level where there's fat heads made of us. That's great. Go ahead.
I don't have a fat head with me, but I'm down in southern Ohio, big timber, and there's not a lot of ag around, so the food supply is fairly short. Don, you've said in the past that you don't really believe in doe calling. You think it's more of, you think it'd be more of an area kind of effort to get that done. Terry, what would be, do you have a different perspective of, I don't know, no pun intended about the perspective, but do you have a different a thought process about doe calling? Because we have a lot of does, and I can tell you, food plots get wiped out. You know, I obviously have to do a better job of getting some better forbs growth and all that, but it seems to me that doe calling would be important, but Don seems to be against it.
I think that in big ag area like where Don is and where I hunt up in this area, you know, I have farms within an hour drive of here, actually 40 minutes from here. It's a completely different, it's not apples and oranges, it's apples and ping pong balls. And when you have this much open ag and can disperse the deer herd that much, especially through the summer, you know, spring and summer, And it's just different where we're at, and you're lucky some places that you could have a quarter or half acre food plot. You have to control that herd. There's just no doubt about it. I think it's irresponsible for someone who has a platform to get up in front of somebody and put in a plan or make an idea and say it's good for everywhere in the country. Now, their idea could be relative to their geographic or their home base, but to say that's going to work down in Mississippi where Dr. Strickland might have 200 deer come out in the Delta and be in these fields, what's going to work up here works down there, I think that's irresponsible for somebody. But in my home farm, I do all of my hunting at my home farm in early season in September, and then I move up here during the rut. So what I'm looking for is bachelor group hunting, and then quite honestly, if I have every fork corn buck locked down with a doe on my property and keeping them off the neighbor, I'm completely fine with that. If I was there hunting and wanting to see the rut action, I might have a different approach.
So would you call your bucks in the earlier part of the season or later?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I think whenever you have a shot to kill whatever buck you want to shoot at, and you have that ability and not put too much intrusion on it, I think you take the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I thought the early season would put more pressure on, but do you have and one last thing, do you have like a ratio that you go by from the standpoint of just kind of gut feel from the standpoint of what you're seeing?
You telling me or him now? Still me?
You, yeah.
No.
Got it.
If I can still feed them, I want them there. I mean, it really comes down to my whole farm is nothing but food for deer. I don't practice agriculture on it. So as long as I still have food, I'm not doing it. But I can clearly see people who are in a situation where they have much smaller food plots. They have to take care of the herd to support it, to make them as healthy as they can.
All right. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Dr. Strickland can say again that I'm an idiot. He's done it before. Where's he at? Is he still here?
He's back there talking to Alan Foster.
Give me a thumbs up if I'm an idiot. Carrie gave me 2. I'm not sure if
she knows you way
I'm
better
not
than
sure
Dr.
which
Strickland.
finger she was sticking up though.
Hey guys, first thanks for having us. Great event. Food was awesome. Thanks for all that. My question is for both of you. When you think about percentage of acreage that you're doing in food plotting versus on your properties, what would that come out to be? And I'm asking because, Don, you came to my place. Do what?
You're making me do math?
Well, something close enough, Terry. Don, when you came to my place, your first suggestion was create food. And we've done that and followed through with the plan, but I mean, my food plots get destroyed. I mean, to the point, where it's very difficult to have much left come October, November in the season. And Tyler, my son, asked Dr. Strickland about the carrying capacity of deer earlier, and that's one of the reasons he asked. I don't feel like we're carrying too many deer, but we must be. We're doing up to 30 acres of corn and beans and trying to leave it for deer, and it's gone. And the grave corn's gone. It's just not there. 10 acres last year didn't make it through October. So some suggestions. I know we could fence it. I know we could do other things. I know we should probably shoot more deer. That's always an option. But I'm just curious how, particularly you, Don, how you're able to have enough food on your farm and how much you're doing in that space.
Well, the reason I'm able to have that many deer on my farm is that I live in an area that's heavily agriculture. So when I plant my plots, I really don't have that much browse pressure on them until the fall when the deer start moving in. So I get to grow, soybean plots that are a half acre and get away with it. As far as a percentage of the ground to put into food, there's no hard and fast rules. There are just too many variables. The deer population for one, what else is available to those deer in the area for another. My approach is that you go in at this time of the year, typically in March, even later March, go in and observe your plots and see what you got left. And if you don't have anything left, you make them bigger the next year. And if it's 60 acres instead of 30 acres, it's 60 acres. And, when it comes to trying to manage your doe herd, if you're the only guy in the neighborhood trying to control the doe population, you can shoot 20 and 25 shows back up from the neighbors. And all you've done shooting those 20 does is you put human intrusion on your property. And the mature bucks are not going to tolerate it. And you end up pushing those mature bucks off, at least for the daylight hours. They may come back at night and feed in your plots, but that's doing you no good if you're trying to kill them. So, I'm all for controlling the doe population, but it's got to be a wider effort than just one landowner, unless you're owning several thousand acres.
And if you're going to, we get called in on consulting visits where they want to kill does, we set up a part of our plan for the area that you shoot does at, sure, to try to stay away from your sanctuary, because you can pull the does all the way across the field much earlier than a mature buck. Sure. Do you live on the property that you're?
No, I do not.
Even close?
Yeah, about 15 miles.
The only thing that was a game changer on my farm in keeping food past like December 1st was we put in a whole ridge top of alfalfa. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I think it takes enough browse pressure off of it. Our hay production is horrible. You got to mow it. We talk about it on the podcast all the time, but it seems like for me, at least in Kentucky, it took the pressure off my beans and corn so much more by putting alfalfa out and just pulling them away. And we put it on the front side of the ridge, left the food plots where we had access to. And, yeah, they came out through the beans, through the corn, but eventually most of that night feeding was in the open alfalfa field, and it took a lot of pressure off of it. So maybe if you're 30 acres, get more diversity there and try to put more of that legume in for, earlier season. It might help you.
It's a great suggestion. Don had told me the same thing when he came. So we have 12 acres of alfalfa already, and it's highly browsed too.
Yeah.
Maybe we just have a lot of deer, and maybe that's a good thing. But
it's worse than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
I don't think we're doing a good job at saying our words yet.
Well, I'm going to have to start throwing one or two out here and there.
Garbage! No, I'm just kidding.
Whoa. I have a question. We're talking about growing deer herds and all this stuff here, but I see a food plot, a value to it, to getting youth involved. Some of the shots, archery hunters, and you typically that's where a lot of kids start. And over the years, over my lifetime, the 40-plus years of deer hunting, I've seen that population of young people go smaller and smaller. I'd ask what possibly we can do to get the kids involved, because it's going to disappear. I'm getting older. Everybody seems to be getting a little bit older in the industry, mm-hmm, and you got to pass it down to somebody.
Well, it starts at home, and it starts when they're young. If they grow up playing video games, well, yeah, guess what? When they get older, they're going to want to play video games. But if they start out young, going with Dad to the woods, going fishing, whatever, enjoying different things in the outdoors, that's where it starts. We can't wait until they're 12, 13 years old and then try to drag them to the woods and make deer hunters out of them. I think the other thing that I would like to see more of is we don't start our youth out as deer hunters. Start them out on small game, start them out trapping, hunting squirrels, rabbits, whatever, and work up to deer. I think there's too many young people whose first hunting experience was sitting in an elevated blind over a corn pile with a rifle, and Dad's sitting there next to him, and Dad's done all the work. He's put the blind up, he's put the corn out, he's probably even carried the rifle up into the blind and put the cartridge in it. And along comes a deer, 30 minutes later, and Junior shoots it, and guess what? There's no excitement in it for him. But right, when he starts out at 4 or 5 years old going to the woods with Dad, small game hunting with Dad, and he's not even carrying a gun, but he's sitting there at the base of a tree watching Dad shoot squirrels or whatever. It's a progression. It starts at home, and it starts when they're young. We just can't start, when they're teenagers.
100%, I agree. Thank you.
Raise your hand if you all were in Shipshawana for the Legends Roundtable. How many people in the room were there? I can't wait for the rest of you all to be able to watch this video, because the overwhelming theme from the Wenzel brothers and Bobby Worthington was about woodsmanship. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing lacking in today's hunting community, is that, we're not taking our young kids out and teaching them true woodsmanship. I can't wait for you all to get the opportunity to watch this on video at some point, because there is just from those type of guys who pioneered this. I'm not allowed to. Gene said I wasn't allowed to call it a sport anymore. I have to call it a hobby or a passion. But we're not doing justice to our next generation if we're not teaching them woodsmanship side of the hobby or activity that we're doing.
Ryan Bowman, Northwest Ohio. Don, I got a question about the electric bikes, like the Quiet Cat, as far as human intrusion. Does that work pretty well for getting in and out of a property so a buck or a mature doe won't cut your tracks? Does it help out? It
absolutely does, but the human intrusion, there are certain places on a property, your sanctuary, where you don't want the bike, you don't want anything. Right. So that bike is going to cut down on ground scent. I can also tell you that when the deer see you on a bike, they almost look at you like they can't believe what they're seeing. That doesn't even seem to spook them. They just look at you like you're nuts. Gotcha. But you still got to limit that human intrusion to specific areas on your property, even though you're on the bike.
Right. I hunt on a wooded creek section, and it's hard to know if the buck's bedded on us or my neighbors that don't allow any hunting. Mm-hmm. So I want to get in and out. I can't pull a Tony LaPratte and go in the dark 2 hours prior, and sit there and go out, 14 hours later. So.
Well, if you make a magical buck bed, you probably could.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you hear that Quiet Cat's got the new safety feature that your new Duramax does? Unless you got a helmet on it, the Quiet Cat won't go?
Well, that wouldn't surprise me.
Have you wrecked yours yet?
My bike?
Yeah.
No.
Just your pants leg caught in it?
That was the only thing.
That was the only incident?
Yep.
Yeah. I only wrecked mine once.
So, Don, a question for you. What are your thoughts on this new, is it called a grass or what is it? It's like a tall white pole, or it looks like a pole with maybe 3 big white leaves that go round and round. You see them around here?
Yeah.
Big flat country.
Yeah, they spin in the wind. Yeah, I think you need one in your yard. That's what I think.
What's he referring to?
Windmills.
No, I just wanted you to say it so they could check it off.
Oh, is it up there? Is it on the list?
I'm pretty sure it's on the list somewhere. Is it? Is it on the list? Oh, never mind. I thought it was.
I'll help him out. I think Code Brown's on the list.
Is it? I was surprised you were eating before this. You usually wait till after.
Yeah, well, if I had got get up and run, you guys will know what I'm running for.
Oh, my goodness.
What's that?
We can't hear you with headsets on. Yeah, Wes Delks is here. He's not making eye contact right now for obvious reasons.
He's got 2 socks on, too. So.
We were talking earlier today, and Wes, since even the first day he came on at Real World, has taken the brunt of a lot of picking from like 2 older brothers of his, and he's always been such a good sport about it that he was actually worried about what I was going to put in my presentation tomorrow because of some of the photo documentation that I have of him through the years. But I told him I'm going to give him one. I'm going to give everybody a picture of me just as payback to fall on the sword to take some of the brunt weight off of Wes. Is
your picture going to be better than this one?
Nope, it is not.
I will hang that up proudly.
That needs to be your new Instagram and Facebook profile picture.
If I can figure out how to do it.
You will get a whole new demographic of following with that up there.
I bet I can lose them pretty quick, too.
I actually am admin on your Facebook page, so I might change that one after you go to bed tonight. Nobody else has got questions. What's going on here, guys? Come on. Steve doesn't know it yet, but he's editing the podcast for me this week. You're going to cause him a lot of extra work. Thank you, buddy, by the way.
So my question is, you've talked about bucks acting different, mature bucks acting different, playing the wind different than does and young bucks. My question is, how do you, I've been trying to wrap my head around a setup that if I set up for a mature buck, that the does and young bucks don't play to the same script and they get downwind?
Well, that absolutely can happen. So you got to blow your sin into an area where there's low deer likelihood. And that means low likelihood of not only mature bucks, but all deer. And that's where it starts. You got to have a play. Your wind's always going to blow one direction or another. You just got to make sure that whatever stand you're sitting in is blowing into an area with low likelihood of deer being there. I mean, that's step one. I mean, if I could spend the rest of the night here, laying out different scenarios of playing the wind.
And another question, I've noticed that deer like rubbing on cedar trees, and aromatic trees, sassafras I've noticed. The business I'm in, I end up with a mulch pile of cedar. And I bought a rope over a year ago and intended to put it out, but didn't get to it. So I threw it up on top of the mulch pile to let it season. What are your thoughts? Did I do any harm doing that? Or does it benefit or harm?
I don't think you did any harm. I'm not sure you did any benefit either, but you definitely didn't do any harm. Cedar smell is, a smell, it's natural in most areas anyway. So I don't think it's going to spook the deer, but I'm just not sure it's going to attract them either.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tee one up for him. Let's get him fired up.
I got two questions for you. The first one's political.
Awesome. My favorites.
So I'm packing to come here and knowing Illinois has some Democratic politicians. So I checking the laws about concealed carry, and Illinois doesn't honor other states' concealed carry. So how does that make Illinois a safer place, taking the guns away from the law-abiding citizens?
Well, Illinois doesn't follow the Constitution. Illinois is a communist state. There's days when I expect the Illinois State Police to show up at my door, but the truth of the matter is that downstate Illinois is probably not too much different than the states around us. North of I-80, it's a different world. It's a jungle up there where madness and stupidity rules. The purple-haired freaks are breeding like rabbits. So south of I-80, we're good. We're just as country as you are out in Kansas.
All right. Okay, my second question is about giant Miscanthus.
Uh-huh.
If you had a customer who planted Miscanthus the first year and then kind of got some spotty stands, what do you recommend for them going in to try to overseed, I guess, for the following year? What steps would you take to get a thicker stand in the next year?
Well, obviously they're going to need to plant more, but I'd be looking at what the problem was the first time. Was it drought? Did they plant it too deep? Was it weed competition? Don't want to repeat the same mistake twice, so figure out what went wrong the first time and then replant.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Breeding like rabbits, huh?
You ought to see them. You know what they look like?
My question was also, he kind of asked my question. I had a question about Miscanthus, and we had some poor plantings or some of the customers, and I was wondering, I think you mentioned something about not using fertilizer the first year. Why is that? And another question is, has anybody used like a root stimulator or anything like that for Miscanthus with success?
Well, I'm sure they probably have. I don't know firsthand any people that have done it, but I'm sure somebody has. As far as the fertilizer, it's the same thing that when you plant a tree the first year. That tree has lost its roots when it's dug up to be replanted, and that tree needs to regain its root system before you fertilize it, because that fertilizer goes to top growth. And the roots in the top need to be in balance, so it needs to regain those roots before you start fertilizing it. And it's kind of the same way with Miscanthus. It needs to get some roots established first before you start fertilizing it, because you don't want that little rhizome, to have a 10-foot stalk, with multi-stalks. It needs to get a root system that's in balance with the top. And that fertilizer pretty much goes for top growth.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, we have our first winner.
Wow. All right. What's your 5?
Code Brown, Miscanthus, Purple Hair Freaks, Al Foster, Sanctuary.
Did we say Al Foster?
Yeah.
Yeah. We did now. Wow.
All right. You get a deer block.
All right.
Congratulations.
I'm so paranoid about saying all these words more. Was Little Debbie in there?
Somebody said they seen a Little Debbie semi truck go by today, and they thought it was headed to your house. That's what they told me.
What was it? What was it that they called me that one time?
Which time?
I'll think of it here in a minute.
My question is about Miscanthus as well, and you were just talking about trying to marry top growth with root growth. Have you or anybody that you're aware of done anything with trying to cut back the top growth to stimulate more root growth?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
That was shortened to this week.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, Don.
No.
Guys, I'd like to get your point of view on this too. I'd asked Bronson earlier at the end of his spiel on how he would go about calculating the carrying capacity for a deer herd. As you guys are looking at it on your own farms and also on your consulting clients, how are you making that management decision on how many does we should take off and how many deer overall we should have, say, per acre, 40 or 100 acres, so on and so forth? It's going to depend, I know, obviously, but round numbers for most of the greater Midwest, how would you go about approaching that?
Well, I tell them, I give them like a 3-year plan, and I tell them to evaluate the deer herd on their property at the end of that 3 years and see if it's growing or shrinking or staying about the same and adjust accordingly. I base it, a lot of it, on the sign that I see on the property. If you see a browse line, things like that, obviously you want to hit that doe herd a lot harder.
Yep.
I advise them to do it after the rut. Well, first of all, I advise them to shoot any does they see with buck fawns whenever they see them, provided it's not in the sanctuary. I do a lot of hunting on the edge of my sanctuary, and that's one place I'm not going to shoot a doe. I don't want to destroy the sanctity of the sanctuary, if you will. I think If You Will might be on there too, huh?
If You Will.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's the approach I take. Let's give it 3 years, following this plan, and see where we're at, adjust accordingly.
I contact my federal government, and they allow the deer to identify as whatever they want to be in the best interest of whatever research is being done at that point in time.
So I'm supposed to confirm with them before I make
Yeah,
the
it's all
harvest
their
decisions?
decision. It's not biological. It's their decision as life goes on.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Thanks, Terry.
And Dr. Strickland's going to follow that one.
I'm following up with Don, not you, Terry. Don. One thing that we do that's a little bit different is we do everything what you're describing, is that we look at the habitat, we can tell do we have too many deer or not, but what we utilize is carcass. We let the carcass condition. So when we recommend, sometimes if I don't have any familiarity with the property, I'm going to give a blanket statement of it may be 5, it may be 10, it may be 20, it may be someplace it may be 50 or more. But we're going to look at the average body weight and the carcass condition. And then the following year, after that recommendation, if we did not change carcass condition, then we up. Now we might go from 50 to 70. And so that's how we do to when we start seeing carcass condition improve, that's where we figure out we've probably reached the stable, harvest strategy for that reason. So we can do these sophisticated calculations. Nobody in the real world is going to do that. That's a university. We can look at a browse index and look at habitat condition, But for me, the favorite way to do it is doe body weight, doe carcass condition, fat levels, etc., because I can put a number to it. I can quantify it, and I can track it over time.
It all comes back to Little Debbie's.
With you, Terry, it all comes back to Little Debbie's.
It's nice to be famous for something.
Would you guys kill a management buck out of one of your best buck stands?
After he's already tagged out and I go in to kill his management buck, yeah. It's happened before.
Yeah, it just depends on the situation, the time of the season. You know, I'm not going to go in October and shoot a management buck when I got a target buck on the same property. But
there's been years where you did not have a target buck on your property that we it's just what you're trying to do on the farm that year.
Right.
If there's a buck he's going after, nobody's management hunting until he closes the deal on that buck.
I was just kind of curious for, if you wait till later, would you wait till later? Obviously, I guess if you don't have a target buck, would you still wait for later, or would you just kind of kill him when you have a chance?
Kill him when you get a chance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? We got time for a couple more. Uh-oh. Our main man, Dwayne Hopkins, is coming up here. Uh-oh. He's going to the other one.
He's going to be on camera.
So we had a dealer in today, and referencing Miscanthus, he wanted to know your thoughts on planting it early and letting it sit dormant in the ground for 6 weeks, 7 weeks prior to warm up and starting to grow, as opposed to leaving it dormant in a refrigerator or just a non-soil type environment. If that was a good idea, or better to be early than late, or what's your thoughts?
Well, it'll definitely work early, but I put it in the same category with switchgrass. We can frost seed switchgrass, and it'll definitely grow. But I think I learned it from Scott Finnendale a couple years ago. Actually, it's been more than that, but he shared with me the success he was having with switchgrass, planting it later after the soil had warmed up. And I tried it and had the best switchgrass stand that I ever had. And I think the reason for it is if you wait, they both need soil temperatures around 60 degrees before they're going to start growing. And if you go in and frost seed or plant it way before soil temperatures reach that, what will happen is you get a crop of weeds that come on first. And then when those things, whether it be switchgrass seed or a Miscanthus rhizome, by the time it finally starts to grow, it's competing with a crop of weeds. But if you wait for that soil temperature to warm up, go in there and spray the weeds and immediately drill in the switchgrass or plant the Miscanthus, then it's got a whole lot longer window, especially if you're using a residual with it or a pre-emergent herbicide with it. You've got a longer window of time where that seed or that rhizome can establish before it has to compete with the weeds. So I've become, in the last 2 or 3 years, a bigger fan of waiting for the soil temperature to warm up before planting.
Okay. The follow-up question today was, can you put atrazine or simazine type product on a existing stand of Miscanthus switchgrass?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yep. Everybody hear that?
Why don't you repeat what he was just saying?
So Scott was saying that if you go in early and plant, and the soil conditions aren't exactly right, using a tree planter, the packing wheels don't always close that trench all the way, and it can leave, the trench open for a little bit, and that rhizome can dry out, and it kills it before it ever has a chance to grow.
On that same topic, so we're up in Michigan. Say we plant Miscanthus right now. Warmer weather, no frost in the ground. Say we get cold again and we get some freeze. Do we have to worry about, can you plant it too early and have a problem with it freezing?
With Miscanthus?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure you could, yeah. The one thing that Miscanthus is susceptible to, especially a young planting, is freeze. So that first year is pretty critical. That first winter, so you plant it in the spring, it grows to whatever height, and that next winter is typically, if you're going to get any winter kill, it'll happen that first winter. There's just not the thatch or whatever on the ground to insulate the ground, especially if you don't have snowfall to insulate the ground. That's going to be a situation where you can lose some plants that have even established. So, a new rhizome is going to be even more susceptible to that.
What you want to watch for is sub-zero temperatures for a long period of time with no snow on the ground. That's the worst case scenario.
So maybe a couple days where the lows might dip into the 30s or low 30s, high 20s, so you wouldn't be worried about that?
No, I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
Terry, why did you choose alfalfa over clover chicory mix on your farm?
Because I was trying to graze enough to get some money out of something and let the farmer bale it and sell some hay bales.
Fair enough.
I like making money sometimes. Farming does not achieve that goal. How many can agree with that one? Yep.
I kind of got two questions. One's a funny and the other one's not. But Don, with 4 potential target bucks coming up, what sets the benchmark? Is it 200, 4.5, 5.5?
That's fun.
On my property?
Yes.
How maturity? I want a buck to be at least 5 years old. I'd prefer they be 6. That's not to say if he reaches 200 at 4, he's going to get shot. I guess I proved that with Mel, but I'm really trying to grow bucks that are at least 180. I feel that 170 has become relatively easy on my property. I think I had 4 or 5 bucks over 170 this past year. The 180 is a totally different game, though. I can have 5 or 6 170s for every buck over 180, but it's really more about maturity than anything. I want to allow the best bucks in each age class to live to maturity. So, like this year, there was, 6 or 8 3-year-olds. I want the best of that 6 or 8, the best 2 or 3, to make it to 5 and 6. And whatever they become at 5 or 6, it's time to shoot them.
The other one with Wes's past modeling career and Terry modeling the love swing. Will there be a Diamond in the Rut Whitetail Life edition to promote women in hunting?
I'm going to guess we wouldn't sell very many issues, but I don't see that happening.
For somebody in Shipshawana, right at the end of our row, where all of our booths were. So it was basically like this Chasing Giants row. We had Osseo, Jay Gingrich was there, Brenton Firearms was there, Lester's Feet was there, Whitetail Life was there. I forget who else was there. We had somebody else, and of course Bobby Worthington and the Winsel brothers were all in the, and right at the end of our row, I'm not kidding, somebody brought in this display that had 2 tree saddles hanging from it. And I had somebody come over and offer to make a $500 donation to Lester's Feet if I got in one and they could take a picture. And I said, okay. And then we never did it before we left. So I failed to generate revenue for the foundation, but I was going to do it. I probably would have hung myself, but
I'm 14 years old, and what hunting advice would you have for somebody my age?
Have fun. Don't set the bar too high. Don't try to achieve unrealistic expectations. Get a few deer under your belt. Raise the bar slowly. Don't watch too much TV or hunting videos or hunting magazines, and try to achieve what guys that have been hunting for 40 or 50 years are doing. Have fun. Take it one step at a time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And where will this country end up in 50 years?
My guess, in all seriousness, is Jesus will return before 50 years.
I hope so, anyway.
Tomorrow would be fine with me.
This question is for Terry. Could you explain what the special underwear is for? I think a lot of people are wondering what it is for.
I should have brought a pair.
No, thank you.
Do we really want to get into this?
I don't.
Yeah. It's life-changing. You just...
Terry obviously has personal issues that I don't have. So.
I'm not sure how I can explain it on air. There's a big group of Amish people in Shipshewana that genuinely asked that question, and I just pulled my phone out and let them all look at it, and their eyes got about this big around. So, life-changing. That's all I'm going to say on air. It's just life-changing. I think I improved market share by like 20% of that company just by mentioning it on this podcast, because it's hard to tell how many people ask me about that.
I don't think we need him as a sponsor, though, do you?
No.
No.
You might get the adult diapers while you're hunting, though.
In Osseo camo.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we got time for a couple more. Let's make your way up to the mic. Can't end on that question. We got to actually end it with somewhat productive, and we've only
given away one block. We got 9 more blocks. I know David Kimes got a question right there. Blue shirt, second row.
Well, you got to go up to the microphone.
Got to get up to the mic, but this young lady's going to go first.
So I'm in the process of trimming about 60 apple trees, and it's a real big pain. So at what point on your farm do you just stop trimming them and let nature be?
The day I plant them. It's survival of the fittest on the Higgins Ranch, I can tell you that. Seriously, I might, when they're first planted, for the first year or two, I might shape them up. You know, if you got some weird branches crossing or whatever, I'll trim them up then. But once they get going, I don't touch them. It's literally survival of the fittest.
All right, and then we're looking at planting some chestnuts. Is there a variety that you prefer to use? Chinese
Chestnuts. Keep in mind they don't like wet feet, so you plant them on a drier site. And they don't like soil with a higher pH. You need an alkaline soil. If you can keep it below 6, it's better. So don't be going out there and throwing lime around your trees or anything. If you see those trees, the leaves turning yellow, that's chlorosis, and that's the pH is off for that species. Pin oaks get it a lot. White pines can get it. Red maples can get it.
And then with your chestnuts, are you tubing them or are you putting a big cage around them? Which is your preference?
I tube the chestnuts.
It's the only recommendation from China he'll ever give anyone.
I trust China more than I trust my own government, believe me.
Wow.
You think China's going to show up at your door? I don't fear China showing up at my door. But I fear my own federal government showing up at my door, especially once they see this thing.
That's hilarious. All right.
Hey Don, on a more serious note, I don't think you're planning on running for a government position, but if you did run for president, what would your top priority be? A lot of presidents, the first day in office, they'll sign a whole pile of bills or laws in effect. What would your top priority be in trying to actually make a difference?
I would cut basically most government agencies. I think the government is too involved in everything. The EPA needs to be about 2% of the size it is today. The FBI needs to be about 10% the size it is today. Even the USDA is too big. We don't need a government agency in every county employing a dozen people to hand out farm subsidies. Probably not a very popular thing to say amongst a bunch of farmers. The government's gotten too big. Everything they do comes out of our pocket. They may be handing us checks, but that check came out of somebody else's pocket. Capitalism needs the chance to run and run free. We need to get the government out of the way. the list is going to be long. You got till midnight. The border needs to be secured. If I was king, we would do away with the two-party system right out of the gate. We would have term limits for every politician. Boy, what else? When you retired from being a politician, there would be no retirement plan. You serve for 2 terms, and you get out and you go home and you make a living like a normal person, and instead of trying to live off the backs of everybody else. We would put God back in our schools. We would have the 10 Commandments back on all our federal buildings. We would live with morals and ethics again. Every person would be treated as an equal. The list just goes on and on. Basically, to put it in a nutshell, we would bring back Christian values in our society.
Another question: do you think a person with an honest agenda to try to make a difference, running for a higher position, do you think that's even possible if you're not politically crooked?
Well, we're seeing what's happening with Trump. I mean, I think his motives are pure. I think the guy literally loves this country so much, it's brought him success. I think he wants it for future generations. And you can see what our federal government's trying to do to him. They're trying to destroy the guy in any way possible through a crooked court system. And now you're going to get me fired up now. Yeah, no, I think an honest guy, he better be prepared for the federal government to come at him with both barrels blazing, because they're going to try their best to destroy him.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question. That was my favorite one of the night. You get a free deer block just for asking.
I got a question, Don.
Okay.
You're running for president, and you get to appoint all of your staff. And who's your vice president and all the other positions? Because one of them's over here in the front row to the right. I know he's going to be on staff because.
That's a good question. Yeah. My vice president.
Who's your vice president?
Well,
Wes Delks or Ann Razor? Nobody in the room knows who Ann is, but she's going to laugh when she.
I call her Madam President. She
nickname.
would make a great president.
You might need to do Ann just to get her set up to be president.
Well, if she had my backing, she'd already lose more votes than she'd ever gain. So. Vice president. Well, you would need somebody that understands the ins and outs of Washington, D.C. and how it works. You couldn't just take 2 people like me and Terry and go into Washington and change the world. We don't have a clue what's going on there. We've got the values that we would like to promote, but we don't know the workings to get it done. So it'd have to be somebody that understands that.
Don't know.
Good enough? Yeah, I don't know who it would be. Donald Trump. How's
Okay.
that? Donald and Donald.
All right, here's the next question. And if you mention the word Lucky Buck, I'm going to mute you on the podcast board, just so you know.
Close enough. Hey, I want to thank Don and Terry to be able to come out here and have this little event here. We've been looking forward for this for a long time, and it's definitely been a blessing to us to be able to come out and get this together like this. But I got a couple questions, and the first one is, Don, have you ever seen a buck where they had a boundary line where they came up to a certain point and didn't cross that fence over onto another piece of property?
Well, I'm sure it happens. I mean, every buck has got a boundary. Where it is, it might be a road, it might be a river, it might be a railroad tracks. I think the boundaries for most bucks are pretty loose. So, most of the time he doesn't cross this particular road or whatever, but on a rare occasion he might. So I don't know that I really know a buck well enough to know exactly what he does.
We just had a situation a year ago where we had had a piece of property in between us, and we got to hunt on the property not next to us, but the following property. and we had a 107-inch buck on there, but we never seen him in our fruit plot. Never had we never met him or seen him one time, and I thought, well, it was kind of funny because he kind of stayed in his core area, but I wasn't sure if there's something to that. And the other question I have is, would you prefer a ladder stand or a climber on one of them big windmills if you'd have one in the center of your property?
Well, if there's one of those in the center of my property, you better take my pulse because it's probably not working anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting this event on. My question was, you've mentioned before on your property on the switchgrass of the north slope, you have the most dominant buck bedding there. Do you think that's because of they're more comfortable there or more secure there? Like maybe the sun not hitting them as directly on the north slope? Or do you think that could be duplicated on other properties?
Well, it can definitely be duplicated. I think it's a security factor more than anything. Because when those bucks come out of that bed, they almost always come out with either a wind straight in their nose or a quartering nose wind. So I think they bed there because a lot of the more common winds in the fall, they can exit that bed before dark and be safe doing it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Carrie's got a question. She's coming up to the microphone. She didn't hear me. All right, we got any more? I think somebody mentioned it just a minute ago, thanking us for having this. It really wasn't us. You take a minute and thank the team of people that put this thing together because we had very little to do with it.
Yeah, you'll be hearing from a lot of those guys tomorrow morning. Tonight was kind of a fun night. Tomorrow it's going to be a lot more business. I got some things we want to share with you. Pretty excited about new products, but also I'm going to share some of the history of Real World. Most of you don't know how Real World started. I'm going to go back to day one, actually before day one, and share with you how Real World got started. But the whole ownership team is going to be introduced tomorrow. So if I look to the back of the room, I see Matt back there, Janice and Tim. Where's Lonnie and Jean? Merle, Chad. The guys you see in these dark blue shirts, that's the ownership team and also some of our employees. So they're the ones that put it on. I've been on the road so busy that I had about this much to do with it. So hats off to those folks.
Yep. Oh, we got another question.
Yes, Don. Another question I have. It's a little more of an ethical question. So if you're shed hunting on your property, and you walk your fence line, and you find a shed that's just over the fence, is there I think we all know what the wrong thing is to do, but is there a good way out of that situation? If your neighbor, let's say you get along with him, but it's a target buck, you don't want him to know about the sheds, obviously you can't pick him up. Would you pick him up and give him anyways? You just let him lie and
for me, it depends on the neighbor. I mean, I've got neighbors that butt right up to me that wouldn't care whatsoever if I went and got it. They'd probably be glad if I did, so they didn't run over it with their tractor. A situation where I had a neighbor that was also a serious deer hunter. If he's any good at all, he knows that buck exists. I don't need to hide the sheds from him. He knows about that deer. So we just got to treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated. In that situation, I'd probably call him and tell him it's over there. Now, I probably wouldn't have done that 20 years ago, to be quite honest with you. But today, I've seen big deer, big antlers cause morally and ethically sound people to do stupid things. And I can probably throw myself in that group in years past. Today, I finally recognize that I've got a little bit of a platform that I need to be setting a better example. So if that situation happened to me today, I'd probably just pick up the phone and call the neighbor and say, hey, there's a giant shed or set of sheds laying, and here's where they are. You may want to go grab them.
A follow-up question. Would you, the following, or right after that, would you put up a high fence along there?
If I was going to put up a high fence, it would have already been put up. If he's a good enough neighbor that I'm going to call him, he's not a guy that I'm going to fence off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question a little bit more political. With all the certain states going after the foreign ownership and real estate, and I guess it's important to me on why we as a country even allow that. If we're going to be hunting in 20 years or 50 years from now, we can't have China buying up 400,000 acres of real estate a year. I would like your comments and thoughts why the government and not every state would get behind this foreign ownership bills and laws.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. The reason the government's not doing anything to stop it is the government's taking money under the table. Why do we spend, we're the only country in the world that taxes our citizens and then sends it to foreign countries. Why do we send millions and billions to foreign countries? It's because half of it's coming back under the table for the politicians to shove in their pocket. There's no other explanation for some of the stupidity that goes on. And then all you got to do is look at the politicians and their wealth when they come into office and then what it is when they leave. I mean, they make $170,000 a year or something, and then, 3 terms they leave billionaires. I mean, it's obvious what's happening. So I don't see our federal government ever stopping it. And that's why they're taking the money.
So Indiana right now is getting behind a bill. Is Illinois, do they follow the same?
Do you know our governor? Yeah. I better just stop. We've already been kicked off of YouTube for this episode as it is. So.
If anybody wants to watch this on YouTube, do it quick. It ain't going to stay up long.
It is not going to be up there long. We might have to come up with an alternate. You'll be able to listen to the audio. They can't control our audio, but YouTube might be a problem.
Well, here's the reason I appreciate you folks so much, is because you allow me to open my mouth and say what most of the country is saying, and you still support me and support our company. And I appreciate that more than you know, because if there's one thing I'd love more than my family, not more than my family, but there's one thing that I really love, it's this country, because this country has allowed me to be right here where I'm at today. If I was born in any other country in the world, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would probably be, herding cows in a loincloth or something. Literally. This country has allowed me to do this, and it saddens me because I got 3 grandsons that were here tonight that I fear will not ever have the same opportunities I had. And I look out here and I see young people that are never going to have the same opportunities. And it's got to start with us. We got to start supporting each other. I mean, you guys got your choice of where you can buy your food plot seed, where you can buy your groceries. You can go to Walmart, or you can go to the local grocer, Mall and Paul grocery store that supports their community. When the Little League team needs a sponsor for their team, they're not going to Walmart. They're going to the Mall and Paul grocery store. And I really love the fact that you guys support me even though I can't keep my mouth shut. So thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having us. And I do have a few questions here. Back to hunting, that is. So we have a 360-acre property that has about 60 acres tillable on it, and the rest was clear-cut about 20 years ago. So we have this problem of small trees all over the place, no underbrush whatsoever. And I didn't know, is there any, it's probably no simple way, but is there any way we can do TSI work to improve the underbrush, maybe create more browse and that kind of thing?
Well, there definitely is, but without seeing it, I wouldn't know what to prescribe.
Right. So it's in New York. It has a lot of maples and some oaks, but is there anything like planting more food plots. Our problem is the deer are wiping out the food plots, and come hunting season, by November they're gone, and we don't have any deer, hardly any deer there, over the winter time. So I didn't know, is it just a matter of planting more food plots, or, doing some TSI work and something like that?
I think it's a combination of all that. You probably need more plots, but you also need more browse.
Sure.
Browse makes up a large percentage of a deer's diet, and it's probably one of the easiest things to produce on your property, but it's going to require sunlight getting to the ground and growing that woody vegetation that the deer will browse on. And without seeing it, I can't say exactly what your property needs, but browse is definitely a major food source that every property needs.
Yes, and so another question. So we do have some standing clover, and my dad would like to plant Miscanthus, and I told him we would have to spray it, and he's like, well, couldn't we just go along, dig holes, put the rhizomes right in the standing clover? I said, well, I don't know, if there's too much competition there, I wasn't sure what you would think on something like that. There's not a whole lot of weeds there, so that was his idea of controlling the weeds.
It's a bad idea.
Bad idea?
Yeah.
I'll tell him.
It's competition for that rhizome, and you need to clear it out. And with clover, you can probably get away with just tilling it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, especially with grasses, you're going to need to spray it first, and then work the ground, get loose soil, a good seed bed to get that rhizome in, and it'll root out a whole lot better and faster. But you don't want any vegetation growing there. Even good vegetation like clover you don't want there.
Right. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, Don, if you were going to contact a local agent from Biofarm and ask him to give a perspective of being brutally honest, what would you tell him?
Well, I would tell him to call Mel and make sure he doesn't talk to a purple-haired freak.
Do we have another winner?
Oh, there we go.
We got
boom, boom, boom.
We got oh boy, how many we got? Is Chad keeping up with this? Okay. See Janice.
What number are we at now?
Raise your hand on if you won on that win. 1, 3, 5. So we're at 7. I'm doing math again. You all got the Kentucky boy trying to do math with his shoes on. It's not usually a good idea.
Well, I can't see that list over there.
I only have. We haven't talked about dough factories. That did not come up tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I guess we got at least 10 now. So.
Yeah, I think. Oh, Jeff Gibson's coming back up here.
I got one more for you, Don.
Okay.
Well, two, actually, real quick. Can a diversion fence be too long?
Nope.
Okay. I did want to thank you personally for this. 2 years ago, killed my biggest buck with a diversion fence. 197, he was with a doe. I seen him 4 times. I didn't kill him till the 5th time. So took me 6 hours of sitting in the tree watching him with that doe. But because of that diversion fence, I did kill him.
Congratulations.
He was a giant.
All right. If we was to be able to take Panther Creek, 16,000 acre public hunting land, and take yourself, Tony LaPratte, Mark Drury, Lee Lukowski, Chuck Adams, the Winsel brothers, Wes Delks, your cohort in crime sitting next to you, Alan Foster, Joe Miles, Fred Bear, Bobby Worthington, any of those. Who would kill the biggest buck with 1 week? And Panther Creek's got some nice deer on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when it came to one deer, 1 week, it's not a fair contest. You need to do that for 5 years. Every guy gets to go in and shoot 1 buck a season for 5 seasons and then total up their inches at the end of 5 years.
Okay. Well, my question would kind of revolve around a guy with a week's vacation. He goes and hunts,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I
Well-
like your premise, though, with the 5-year total.
If I had to, do we get to pre-scout?
Sure. Get the pre-scout, but you only get to hunt a week.
I know who I want to say.
I think Fred Bear might be able to do it, but I don't know.
Fred
No?
Bear, he was a good
No?
bow hunter, but he wasn't that good a whitetail hunter compared to what we got today.
Okay.
If I had to put my money on, I guess I'd go with probably Bobby Worthington.
Okay.
I'll wait in the truck with the snack cakes. I don't even need to be in the conversation.
All right, and thanks for a great event. So
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you.
All right, we're going to wrap up with that. Oh, we got Mr. Corn Planter himself is here. You guys hear me talk about this young man on the podcast, everyone, every once in a while. This is Clint Cross. If you hear us talking about rebuilding John Deere for corn planters, this is the guy. And congratulations on starting a new dealership and getting into this mess with us. We appreciate it, and we'll do our best to make you successful like everybody else in this room. Congratulations on your business venture for you and your wife, though.
Well, thank you. I almost forgot my question after you was being serious there. Don, I just wondered how well your purple hair would work if you was herding cattle in another country like you mentioned earlier.
In a loincloth, of all things.
I would probably be chased by a bunch of dark-skinned natives.
Edit that
into
out.
the next country.
I've got a quick one. So with deer hunting, like we talked in Shipshewana, becoming more of a rich man's game, what advice would you give to the younger generation who can't afford to buy the land at the prices that it's going for? What advice would you give them to getting into having land that they can actually develop?
Well, first of all, they've got to learn patience. I promise you there's nobody in this room, not a single person, that's been more poor than I've been. I've shared before, my wife and I were first married. We had our electricity shut off multiple times, phone shut off, bills sent to collection agencies. I've been as dirt poor as anyone. I dug out of it, one little bit at a time. And I think a lot of young folks think that they almost expect success too early in life. I've worked to be in the hunting industry, but it wasn't until I was in my mid-50s that I made all my money in the hunting, all my income in the hunting industry every year. So I think you got to set your goals big. I mean, absolutely dream about owning hunting property, but it might not even be a 10-year plan. It might be a 20 or 25-year plan, and maybe you start with 10 acres. You buy that 10 acres and it increases in value as you're paying it off, and then when you get it paid off, you flip it and you buy 20 or 40. But don't expect it to happen in 10 years. Don't expect it to happen in 20 years. Set a lifetime goal. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I think that the thing that sets me apart from the average person is the passion that I had for deer hunting and wanting to own land. And I don't say that to take anything away from anyone, but I had no interest in fishing. I had no interest in turkey hunting. I had no interest in anything. Owning motorcycles, fishing boats, that didn't interest me. I was interested in one thing, that was chasing big whitetails. And it took me decades to get there, but eventually I owned a hunting farm. And I just think that too many young guys are expecting it to happen too soon. So play the long game. Plan to own ground in 20, 25 years, not in 5.
We're going to wrap the show up today, and I just asked Wes to go over to the microphone. Everybody, this is Wes Delks. I don't know if you all have met him in person or not, but we joked around a lot tonight, and we had some laughs and said some things that'll probably get us banned on YouTube, and that's okay. But part of this dealer conference today is finding ways to make you guys and your businesses successful. We can't do this just as Real World Wildlife Products. This is a family that we are trying to bring together and educate, give you the tools, and inspire you all to go back and make a difference in your all's community and help other people that are trying to help their habitat and their deer herd. And I can't think of a better person to end this show today that meant so much to this company, not only as being part of it when we had a very rapid growth. He came into this company when, quite honestly, we were both really discouraged, and challenged us not only as businessmen but also Christians. For him to close out this show with a word of prayer, praying for everything, but especially their business venture of their dealers and their dealerships and in their community. So you didn't know you were getting yourself into this, but I'm going to ask everybody in this room to stand and take off their caps. And we're going to close out the show with Wes leading us in prayer and praying for what we're trying to do as a family here under Real World. So Wes, take it for us from here.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the blessings you've given us and the whitetail that has brought us all together, the relationships that's brought, and the blessing that Real World has been to my family and hopefully a lot of people in this room. I just pray that we would use our platform to reach other people and spread the good news of Jesus Christ. Help us to bless other people, and those are blessed to be a blessing. I pray for the storm passing through that we'd have a lot of dry seed and dry mineral and feed in the next couple days. Just give these people safe travel back home. Thank you for the opportunities you give us, this great country. And God bless. Amen.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.